here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I have got dinner going here at the moment. I've got a big old skillet of green peppers and onions cut into strips. And I'm just cooking these in some butter until they are nice and tender. And then I will scoop these out into a separate dish, and I'll reuse this skillet to cook some strips of steak. So I am making a really easy recipe for steak sandwiches, and these just turn out super tender every time I make them, and they're seasoned with just some basic ingredients. I have an all-purpose seasoning that I make and I keep on hand at all times. That's what I season the steak with, and I'm using cube steaks. I'll cut those into strips, season them, and they will get browned in this skillet. And then I'll add a few more things. And then finally I have a burger sauce that I will make that will go on to the steak sandwiches. It's got mayonnaise and horseradish, and what else does it have? Some cheese. It's just delicious. And so that is what I am making for supper tonight. And this is another one of those recipes that I like to do more than we would eat for supper, because the leftovers the next day, the meat heated back up, is delicious. Now you can actually, for the leftovers, not only of course could you heat up the meat and have sandwiches again the next day, steak sandwiches, but you could also dice up the meat and peppers and onion. You could add those to some scrambled eggs. You could bake some French fries or sweet potato fries and sprinkle the meat and onion and pepper all on top. Throw on a little bit of shredded cheese, let it all get melty. Fantastic. So there's all sorts of things you can do with this besides just the steak sandwiches. Alright, so while the onions and peppers are cooking, I'm going to go ahead and cut my meat into strips. Now when you cut the meat, and it's a little bit difficult sometimes with cube steaks, but you want to see which way the grain of the meat is going. And generally the easiest way to figure that out is kind of pull on the cube steak and see which way it stretches. Okay, so this way it's stretching, which means the grain of the meat is going this way. So I'm going to cut the strips against the grain, crossways. And doing it that way allows those strips of steak to get extra tender. Alright, so my onions and pepper are tender. And they've got a little bit of lovely brown color on there. So I'm going to go ahead and scoop all of these out into a dish. Alright, I'm going to set that aside. Now I'm using cast iron here, and when you are cooking in cast iron, you always want to use a little bit of cooking fat. And since I'm already using butter, I'm just going to go ahead and add another tablespoon or so of butter in there. While that is melting, I'm going to very quickly season my steak strips here with a little bit of that all-purpose seasoning. Now I'm not going to add any extra salt to this because the all-purpose seasoning has some sea salt in it. And there's going to be some Worcestershire sauce added, which also has salt already. So I don't add any additional salt to this. So I'm going to add in steak strips, but I'm only going to put them in a single layer And I'm not going to be able to do them all at once because you don't want to crowd them, because if you crowd your meat, what happens is it doesn't brown, it steams and boils because all of the juices come out of your meat, and then you're not going to get that lovely browned texture that you're going for. And I've got my stove here. I turned it up a little bit to kind of a high medium. And we're just going to cook these up in batches. Alright, so the meat is all cooked. So I'm going to take the rest of the meat, stick it all back here in the skillet. I'm going to turn my temperature down very low, because now at this point I'm just going to be keeping this warm. I'm going to stir in some Worcestershire sauce. Now, depending upon how much you're making, if you're doing like a big batch of steak, then I would use like a half a cup. I only did a few steaks, and so I put in about a third. I'm just going to kind of mix that all around, and then just let that sit and stay warm while I make the sauce. Now for the sauce, I've got some mayonnaise and some shredded sharp cheddar cheese in there. I'm going to add a little bit of prepared horseradish, some brown mustard, a little bit of Tabasco sauce, and some freshly ground black pepper. I'm just gonna kind of stir this together. Now I mixed this in a microwavable dish so that I can pop this in the microwave and melt it all together. Alright, that'll just about do it. There's still a couple little bits of cheese in there, but that is perfectly fine. And now I'll put my sandwich together. So I've got a roll. I'm going to put on a slice of provolone cheese because I love cheese. Put some nice juicy steak strips on here. On a smear of that lovely creamy sauce. And there we go. I almost forgot. Incomplete. Incomplete. I knew something was missing. I forgot the peppers and the onions. There we go. Much better. Now, that's a sandwich. Alright, so that is how I make my steak sandwiches. And I have this recipe, of course, over on my blog, cosmopolitancornbread.com, and I will put a link to it down below. And there is, of course, a printable version where you can print it out. You can save it to Pinterest or save it however you like to save all of your recipes. So thanks for joining me here in the Homestead kitchen. My name is Constance, and I'll talk to y'all next time.